episode 567, Making Programming Easier.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Okay, so teachers, we know that we need to teach programming, and there are just so many things that we can do, but where do we start? Today, we're interviewing a teacher, Michael Backus from Alaska. He's also written his own Google add-ons, so that will be another show. But Michael, talk to us. I know you teach computer science, you teach technology. Talk to us about what you've kind of invented for teachers and for students.
Yeah, so the most recent project that I've developed is a course called Build and Program Games with Arduino. And in this course, students learn how to build and program two different games. The first one is an electronic Tug-o-War game, and the second one is the simple Simon Says game that I think most people are familiar with. The Tug-o-War game, it sounds really dumb. I'll give you the idea. There's two buttons. There's a little row of LEDs and there's a green LED, and whoever clicks the button first when they see the green LED, they get a point, right?
Okay.
And so whoever gets the most points wins, and you'll see the LED kind of shift from right to left depending on who's winning. I have a little video that explains it better, but I'm going to put it this way. It's kind of a simple game. It's definitely a simple game. I think it's kind of a dumb game, but when kids build and program it, they absolutely love it. And it's super addictive. It's just like Simon. Simon's kind of a dumb game, but it's so addictive. And so the kids really get into it and they really have a lot of fun with it. And so that's really what makes it a great learning experience, is that engagement, that level of engagement that you get when they actually build and program it themselves.
Mike, I have two Arduino boards in my room. I have some, Arduino kits and stuff and lots of programming and instructions, but I'm going to be honest, unless I give a lot of guidance, these kids don't really get into it. How is this different? So I have my Arduino boards. Walk me through what would happen if I went through your curriculum and my students did this.
Yeah, so I actually had an Arduino Inventors Kit several years ago, and I showed it to my students, and it had instructions, and it would be like light up an LED, and then press a button, and then light up a couple LEDs. And, the tasks were, kind of sort of interesting. Basically 2, maybe 3 hours of playing with this thing. Just like you said, the kids sort of get tired of it, and it's not that interesting, right? And so the really big difference between what you see with that and what you see with my curriculum is I'm a teacher that's been trying to teach this for years, right? And I think I've figured out the puzzle, and that is you have to have a game, right? If you have a game, kids will want to do it. And then another piece of the puzzle, there's several pieces, but another piece of the puzzle is melting metal, right? If you add soldering to the picture, middle schoolers love to solder. They love to melt metal. And so what I do is I tell them, I'm going to program this entire game using a virtual circuit simulator. And when you're done with that, when that whole piece is working, the whole programming part, which they're typically not as excited about, when that's all done, then they get to actually build their circuit board and then load the code onto it. And they have a little memento they get to take away from my class and, show their mom and dad or little brother and sister or whatever, and play with their friends at lunch or whatever. Those two things really drive the engagement piece. And then another part that I found that I think I really pinned this one down this year is I made a really thorough quiz that gives students the same program 10 different times. But each time I give them the program, there's one little tiny bug in it. These are the 10 most common mistakes students make. And I have the students work through this quiz really early on. They do a little tiny bit of Arduino programming, and then they have to work through this quiz where they figure out how to debug their own programs. And that part is just hugely critical, because I'm guessing pretty much anyone that's out there who's tried to do Arduinos with kids, most of the time you're debugging their code. Yep. And if you can get kids to debug 50% of their code, all of a sudden they go from kind of twiddling their thumbs waiting for you to really trying to move forward on their own. And when you can make that transition, when you can get them kind of over that hurdle, that hump, all of a sudden, they just start moving forward. So that I had a lot of success with that this year.
Okay, so what you're doing is you're pretty much, a lot of this is free, and then you've got a few things that look like to me they're pretty much at cost. So tell us what all is about this, because you're not sponsoring this show. I'm just talking about it because I think you're really cool, and I think what you're doing is awesome. So tell us.
So here's how the money works. I actually spend $5, a little over $5 a month for a server for my classroom. And it has enough bandwidth and storage space that I can let other teachers take advantage of it. So I have a couple teachers around Alaska right now that use my same server. I don't charge them nothing. It's pennies and then 95% of the assignments can be completed without any hardware whatsoever. So if you're a teacher and you just want to have kids wiring circuits on a virtual simulator and then programming it, you can do that. You don't need any hardware. It can be 100% free. If you want to, but I wouldn't encourage that. I would encourage breaking down and buying the hardware, because that is a pretty engaging component. And I think having students leave with something that they've built and programmed from your class, and they remember that, they'll remember that 2 or 3 years down the road.
Yeah. And so what is the hardware you're getting, and how much is it? Because it's not that expensive.
Yeah. So originally I was going to buy some Adafruit circuit playgrounds that are like $25 or $30. But then I went to an ASTI conference and somebody showed me the AT Tiny 85, and it has a brother, the AT Tiny 84, and it costs $1. And so I designed my own circuit board. I use that little chip, odds and ends of electronics. I'm getting the cost down to I think I'm going to be able to get it down below $5 as soon as I start having a Chinese supplier make the circuit boards for me. So if a teacher really wants to do this and they have the money, I would say you'd probably have to have about $1,000 to buy items in bulk to make, maybe somewhere between 150 and 200 little kits. And so there is one teacher in Alaska that did that. I didn't buy anything for her at all. She just had money. She spent it and bought a bunch of parts. And, months later, she told me she's working on it. But most of the other teachers don't have, that kind of money laying around. I got a grant. I actually got a couple grants, and I used those to buy the parts. And then for smaller schools in Alaska, we have a lot of tiny schools. They said, we can only afford enough kits for maybe 10 students. And that's all the bigger their class was, because it's a rural school. Well, I would just create the kit for them, and then I'd ship it out to them using the parts that I'd bought for my class, and then, kind of recycle the money to buy parts for my students again. When I do that to kind of benefit my classroom, I double the cost. So if it was $5 in parts or whatever, I'd turn it around for $10.
Cool. So are your students helping you build the boards?
Well, I don't build the boards. The students build the students solder everything together. As far as designing it goes, I do all of the designing. There's a big
so you have
learning
like a little
curve
entrepreneurial type thing going on in your classroom that makes money for your classroom.
The students aren't doing any of they're not packaging the kits or anything, at least not yet. I was thinking about having them do it, but my quality control, I had some quality control concerns, and I want to make sure that the project goes well for the teachers that decide to do it. I don't want any missing parts.
Yeah, but this is still awesome. I mean, this is awesome. You know what, Mike? I think that you've already made a sale to me, and I'll be in touch next week and after we record this, and we'll have to do this because I'm dying to do a better job with what I'm teaching. And I love the concept of this debug testing. I'm sitting here going, why didn't I ever think of that? Because it is such an issue when you're teaching, and when you spend all your time debugging software, you feel like, well, what am I teaching? Who's learning here? So anyway, this is fascinating, Mike. Where can people reach you and find the curriculum and look for these kits? Yeah,
so I have a kind of a main website that's akrobotnerd.com, but then the website that's dynamic, it's actually a Moodle server that I created, and that's at learn.akrobotnerd.com. Either one of those web pages has websites has a contact me link on it. Teachers can click on that, send me an email, and I'll get back to them. What I would say, though, this is something I've found out in the past. When I create a project, I find there's a lot of people that want to do it with their students before they do it themselves. I'm going to be pretty honest. I'm willing to go there anymore. I want to make sure that teachers who use my curriculum, they know it well enough that they can teach it. And that means going through it before they go through it with students. So anyone who's interested in using this, I really want you to use it, but make sure you have the time to work through that curriculum first, and then you can shoot me questions and we can resolve any issues you have. That way you have a good experience when you do it with your students.
I would totally agree that this is something that you do need to do first. I mean, when you're dealing this type of technology, I mean, there's some things I guess you can do while their students are learning, but I haven't had that experience. I try to know kind of what direction we're coaching the kids to go. So his name is Michael Backus, aka robotnerd.com. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah. Thank you.